Sometimes the way things begin is not indicative of where they will end up. Video games are a perfect example of this. They're an iterative art form, and a great game often leads to a great sequel. Today, I'm going to see what a great entry point for the series looks like when I complete Shantae for the Game Boy Color.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Shantae is one of those characters who feels incredibly iconic, even though there are only a handful of Shantae games. Something about that purple hair or those fantastic pants, I guess. Guys, should I get harem pants or a tube top? Why aren't either of you responding? Are you leaving? You're leaving. You're leaving. That's my team, everyone. Just wanted to be pretty.
Here comes a new challenger! Yes! Danger!
There's a special formula to creating a cult classic, and Shantae fits the bill. It wasn't very popular when it first came out, probably because it was one of the last Game Boy Color games to be released, and players and developers were focused on the Game Boy Advance. But this 2D platformer had an incredible level of polish, and the art direction set it apart. There was only one run of cartridges printed, so those who had it held on to it, making it one of the rarest Game Boy Color games today. These days, Shantae is seen as one of the most forward-thinking GBC games. The game has a strong personality, and right from the top, shows that it's something special. Our spunky hero, Shantae, a half genie who protects Scuttletown, is shaken awake by a cannonball to the roof. It's Risky Boots, the fabulous lady pirate, and her villainous crew. Shantae catches her trying to steal something called the steam engine, and from there, the game becomes a mad dash all over to stop Risky from creating a super weapon and becoming unstoppable. Now, quick story of my history with this game. As both the collector and a big fan of Way Forward, I had been unsuccessfully trying to find a copy of Shantae for years at conventions all over the US, and even reached out to my friend and creator of Shantae, Matt Bozon, and he wasn't able to hand off one to me, but he did put me in touch with Jimmy Huey, one of the original programmers of the game, who just so happened to have a few new sealed copies of this incredibly rare Game Boy Color game, and he sold one to me for a very fair price, but only on the condition that I do an unboxing video on my personal channel. So the copy I played for today's episode is that exact same copy. Shantae had an unassuming start as one of the last significant Game Boy Color games to ever be released. It was a new IP published by Capcom, who didn't exactly go out of their way to promote the game. Shantae may have been a critical success, but it wasn't a commercial one by any means. However, there was so much personality packed into the cart that Shantae couldn't help but attract a following as the years went on. Way Forward would eventually go on to develop several sequels to Shantae, with the latest game, Shantae and the Seven Sirens, coming to consoles hopefully just around the corner after it was released recently on Apple Arcade. The point is, Shantae went from unknown 32-bit belly dancer to series powerhouse, and this first game is the one that launched it all. Shantae is a platformer that borrows from the Metroid formula, but it's still very much its own thing. It has enough familiar elements to draw newbies in, but is distinct enough to really feel like its own series. It takes a lot to stand out in a crowded field. The Game Boy Color was a Nintendo flagship for years and hosted some of the biggest franchises on the system. Fortunately, every single thing about Shantae's art direction feels incredibly iconic. Shantae has the strongest art direction for a new IP since, well, I don't even know when. Shantae's character design is an instant standout. In a world dominated by a portly dude wearing overalls and a cap, she's got flair with pointy shoes and poofy pants. Interestingly, Matt and Aaron Bozon, the creators of the character, were worried that she'd be construed as too sexy for the Game Boy audience and were really nervous about her design. However, Shantae comes across as confident, and the overall effect of her look isn't really titillating or distracting at all. The character design is awesome, and it's a rad choice to have a harem pants wearing Jeannie who belly dances her way to glory. The great design extends to the awesome secondary characters as well. Risky Boots is like a sexy lady version of Captain Jack Sparrow, a way cooler antagonist than a fat mad scientist. Sorry, Eggman. Even Mimic, your standard crazy weirdo mentor slash father figure, is a great character, right up there with the "it's dangerous to go alone" guy. Shantae's universe feels magical and mysterious, and it all comes across through the characters and art design. I love that the character design influences how Shantae interacts with the 2D platforming sections. Instead of jumping on enemies' heads or shooting them, like normal 2D platforming combat, Shantae whips her hair back and forth and does awesome fan kicks. Every little thing is lovingly and precisely animated. Even the way Shantae tucks her legs in when she jumps. Every little animation and move feels like an extension of her character, solidifying her actions as moves that only Shantae would ever do. And I loved the music in this game. It feels peppy and energetic and helps to define the world. And I'm not just hyping it up because this is WayForward's first collaboration with Jake Kaufman, who obviously at this point in my life is a good buddy of mine. The developers pushed the cartridge to its limit to get the sound out of it the way that they wanted. The music is probably another reason why this game developed into a cult classic. It feels distinct and helps establish Shantae's world as one that has an ongoing rhythm. Dance is important to the character, and the music reinforces that. Nice job, Jake. Let's get back to work on the next album. The central town hub feels totally distinct for the time. Instead of an overworld like a Mario game, whenever Shantae enters a town, the camera shifts to an over-the-shoulder view, and we get the sense that Shantae is really walking around the town square. It's a small but really cool perspective shift that shows how much WayForward was able to wring out of the Game Boy Color cart. There's even a day and night cycle in this game. When the sun goes down, the look of an area totally changes, and the enemies even become more dangerous. And I love this little touch. The boldest and best showcases of Shantae's art direction are in her transformation dances. Instead of using a spell or an item to transform, Shantae instead does a belly dance, which gameplay-wise means I have to perform a little itty-bitty DDR sequence on my D-pad. This mechanic may be slightly complicated, but I liked the extra layer of having to dance to make things happen. It's an awesome touch, and yet another example of what makes Shantae special. Shantae was a new IP that felt very risky. It came out at the very end of the GBC's life cycle and could have easily faded into obscurity, but the art direction is so strong that it helped the game stand the test of time. The main character is sassy and brassy, and the side characters flirt and fight, making a strong case for themselves. Every aspect of the art direction, from the music, to the towns and shops, to the levels themselves, to the combat and transformations, feels wholly unique and was strong enough to turn Shantae from the GBC's last great platformer to a fondly remembered cult classic. But for as strong as the aesthetics are, the gameplay feels like it missed an opportunity for greatness. Platformers as a genre are almost immediately at a disadvantage because they will be inevitably compared to Mario or Metroid, the 800-pound gorillas in the room. At first, it seemed to me like Shantae was ready to tangle with the best, but doesn't flesh out its most interesting ideas or deliver on its coolest premises. Shantae misses the mark in this first outing with an overall gameplay experience that doesn't back up what it promises. That's not to say that Shantae is a bad game or that WayForward doesn't know what they're doing. If anything, I'm only disappointed because I've seen how incredible WayForward has become at perfecting this series. But this first game shows how far WayForward still had to go. Shantae is full of awesome ideas that don't go all the way. When I unlocked Shantae's first transformation dance to turn her into an adorable monkey with high jumping, wall climbing capabilities, I couldn't wait to see what other transformations would be unlocked. The monkey form feels like a real game changer, and since it's the first transformation I found, I hoped that every subsequent one would feel just as awesome as this one. Unfortunately, the next two transformations aren't nearly as transformative as the first one. Elephant form severely limits mobility, but allows Shantae to smash certain parts of the environment. Her spider transformation lets her climb certain webs in the background. Both of these forms feel limited, and to me, almost work like keys in a dungeon. They're only really useful in certain situations, and not all that much fun to run around as. Not like the sweet little monkey, who is adorable and never failed to make me smile. On the other hand, the harpy form feels almost broken because I can fly through levels and skip pretty much any and all combat. Since I didn't get access to the harpy until pretty late in the game, it didn't upend all of the platforming, but it comes pretty close. The combat itself feels like another missed opportunity. Shantae's primary way of defeating enemies is to slap them with her ponytail a couple of times, but collecting gems from defeated enemies or earning them in minigames lets her purchase more combat moves from vendors in towns. And these moves are mostly useless. The hair whip and the fan kick are basically the only moves I ever needed for the entire game. The other moves are interesting, but didn't really help me in any meaningful way. There's a dive kick that seems awesome, but ended up hurting me as often as it helped. The boss fights in this game are similarly mixed. A couple of them are really memorable, like fighting some bozo who rides around on a dragon by transforming into a flying harpy, or going toe-to-toe in a battle against Risky Boots herself. In those fights, the characters' personalities come through really strongly, but other than that, I didn't find them particularly challenging or interesting. The levels themselves don't provide that same fulfilling feeling as some of Shantae's inspirations. The levels are big, but feel kind of empty. They're easy to get lost in because the game's design doesn't do a great job of signposting where to go next, especially in the beginning. They look great and even have parallax scrolling, which is incredibly cool for a GBC game, but they all feel pretty bare. There's a level early on that also relies on a lot of blind jumps into the unknown, where I genuinely didn't know where I would land. And this was kind of scary to play and not in a fun way, because if I missed a jump, I could die instantly. It's that kind of platformer, which is a shame considering how many cool fresh ideas are brought to the table. There are still instant deaths if you fall off the wrong ledge, and game overs that send Shantae back to the last save point. Now, all of these features are lovingly animated and incredibly detailed, but they don't make the game better. They feel not exactly like padding, but almost like first drafts of stuff that will be more carefully considered in future games. But I was left feeling a little bit disappointed because of how often Shantae reached for an interesting idea, but didn't go all the way throughout the rest of the game. Shantae is large and complex for a Game Boy Color game, but collecting everything in the game isn't very satisfying. I found the completion rewards to be more examples of great ideas with flawed execution. So for example, warp squid babies. Extremely cute idea. Every town hub has a big mama squid who's missing some babies, and if Shantae brings them back, the player can warp to that town, but it's 4 squids per town. Being able to warp from town to town is a solid reward, but the effort to unlock that ability felt disproportionate for the amount of work to find all the squidlets. The most elaborate completion bonus is for finding all of the hidden fireflies throughout the game. They are hidden all over the different levels out in the open, but only appear at night. Finding all 12 fireflies lets Shantae read a secret scroll to learn a final dance, the powerful healing dance. Now, I thought this was a perfect completion reward at first. By the time I reached that point in the game, I was ready for some kind of healing ability, but the move drains gems faster than the magic armor in Twilight Princess, and I ended up not using the move very often so that I wouldn't go bankrupt. It's a great idea in theory that didn't land so well with me. Now, I do have to mention the Game Boy Advance enhancements, which I was unfortunately unable to experience in my playthrough of Shantae, which is too bad because they sound amazing. So because this game's development overlapped with the release of the GBA, WayForward did some programming in the cart that would recognize when the game was being played on the latest handheld console. In this case, I could have experienced better and brighter visuals and gained more transformation dances to turn into a Tinkerbat enemy. This would have been awesome, as the Tinkerbat has the abilities of the monkey, spider, and elephant transformations all in one. And you even get a sword in this form. Everyone knows swords make platformers better, but as it stands, I wasn't able to see this for myself. When I completed Shantae, there were 4 transformation dances learned, the coolest of which was the monkey, far and away. 20 baby warp squids found, which let me warp back to any town I had visited, but really made me question the parenting skills of these squids. 12 fireflies found, which were easy to find once I realized they were out in the open and not in any labyrinths. 25 deaths, 8 from falling to my death and dying instantly instead of being bested in combat. 8 hours played, 2 of which involved dancing the night away in the dance parlor to earn gems. And 1 iconic character who really shows how harem pants are always cool. Seriously, should I invest a pair? Do you guys think I can rock it? I mean, I'd love to rock a pair of harem pants, but I don't think they make them in my size. I'm afraid of ripping them, and my butt looks big. Is my butt big? I think my butt's big.
Shantae is a character who is all about rhythm, and I'd say the series finds itself after this first game. This is a great first outing, and so many of the artistic elements show why Shantae is fondly remembered as this instant cult classic. However, the gameplay doesn't rise up to the level I was hoping for. So, with that in mind, guys, I give Shantae my completionist rating of play it.
Play it.
That's all the time we have today, guys, so please, as always, let me know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. If you like the show, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We do videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Guys, I've been Gerard the Completionist, and I'll see you next week for another brand new episode. Bye-bye.